Welcome to Andy and Ari On3, presented by Wendy's. Happy Tuesday. Quite a bit going on. If you listened to yesterday's show, when we were picking the Michigan USC game, I said Michigan has to decide what they want to be. Sharon Moore has to decide if he's going to be the coach who tries to figure out what works or keeps doing the thing that isn't working. He's going to try to figure out what works. He's going to run the damn ball, Ari.
Yep. I mean, I guess you got to do something to change up the offensive performances that they've had for the first few weeks of the season. I don't know if it's going to work, but I commend him for trying. We'll get into that.
We are going to talk about that, but we got to talk about the thing that had you just absolutely heated yesterday. You wrote a column about this on 3, and you went off on Saturday night in the immediate aftermath. You then got an explanation for Mark Stoops deciding to punt on 4th and 8 from the Georgia 48-yard line. And you were not satisfied with that. In fact, you were less satisfied. You were even madder than before. So before we get into your response, and what's interesting about this is in the immediate aftermath, I was tending to agree with you. I went back and listened to that show. I was tending to agree with you. I actually have done a little research myself, and I think I've wound up on Team Stoops, which surprised me as much as it surprised you. But I have my reasons, and we'll talk about it. But first, we got to hear Mark Stoops' explanation for punting 4th and 8, Georgia 48-yard line, 3 minutes to go, 3 timeouts.
I don't take offense to the criticism and not going for it, whatever. Again, I've told the coaches on the headset on first, and I had every intention of going for it. I wish we would have gained some yards, you know what I mean, and had a manageable 3rd down, manageable 4th down. But you got to realize in that same zone on the plus 48, I want to say we had 2 sack fumbles, 1 sack, and 1 sack, and then the next one went back from the plus. Think about if we get 3 there. Think about if Coach Stoops goes conservative and we just run it 3 plays in a row and kick the field goal there, right? Nobody. I mean, again, and I'm not. Don't. If you're gonna report this, report the whole damn thing. You know what I mean? Like I'm not. But if we would have just went. How many people are saying, hey, Coach Stoops, you're dumb. We had the ball on the plus 47. Why didn't you just pound it 3 more times? We're moving the ball, really good against a good defense. What if we'd have got those 3, instead of gotten sack fumbled, and went all the way back to the 22 on the other side? Think about that swing. Nobody talks about that, do they? You know what I mean? So when I had the ball 3 times around the same zone and went negative, and on 2nd down, damn near had a fumble. 3rd down, Dan never had a fumble. We got to that point by playing field position, playing defense. We had a chance to win that game just the way we played it. We came up a play or 2 short. I stand by that.
All right, Ari. I'm going to now 47-yard line. Sorry, I said 48. 47-yard line. So 1 yard even closer to the end zone. Ari, I'm going to let you cook on this.
I am more disappointed that you flopped on me than I am.
I have good reasons. I want to hear you talk about Mark Stoops' reasons first, and then we'll get to mine.
Well, all of my reasons are still the same from the show that we did on Saturday night. But the thing that occurred to me after we did the show and as I was writing the column about it yesterday on 3, Andy, is that we're talking about a man who presumably has the best job in America. We're talking about a man who has probably gotten Kentucky to or near its program ceiling. We're talking about a situation here where if you win this game, you bring Kentucky to a height that it has not seen. I know it's been a few games away from the SEC championship under his leadership. I think he's an incredible coach and somebody who's done about as good of a job of building a program as anybody has in the last decade. This isn't like an anti-Mark Stoops thing. But if you are going to flirt with the Texas A&M job, I think that's an implication that you yearn for more, that you yearn to play for championships, to play at the highest possible level, to win bigger, better trophies. And in the moment where he could have done something for a program that doesn't compete at that level, I thought he played passively. I thought he made the wrong decision. and I thought he took the ball out of Kentucky's hands. Now, the thing that I can't wait to respond to is whatever math you came up with, because I'm gonna freak out. Like, I'm sure there's calculators out there in analytics, and I wrote in the column, I don't care what anecdote you have or what mathematical equation we're solving or what analytics say, those equations don't take into account that Kentucky was playing Georgia. Like, you can say best defense, worst defense. I'm going to let you explain this to people because I think it's interesting. But in that moment, in the part of the season that they're in, on their home field, with 3 timeouts, needing to get a stop if you don't get it anyway, they didn't touch the ball again until there was 8 seconds left. You don't give the best team in college football, the program that we were laughing about being Darth Vader, a get out of jail free card. Could you imagine the wave of enthusiasm and excitement that Kirby Smart felt the second he saw that punter come on the field when you know you're 1 first down away from potentially losing on the road to Kentucky? He let him off the hook. And there's no equation or anecdote that you can say right now that's going to change my mind.
So you are bringing feelings, and I'm going to bring facts, because here's my thing. I kill coaches who punt when they should go for it, when the math says they should go for it. I kill them. But if I'm going to kill them for punting when the math says they should go for it, then I should not kill them when they punt when the math says they should punt. So there's not a college football 4th down calculator out there on the internet. There is an NFL one that uses years of data. And I used that one because I thought that was interesting. And I actually changed up the circumstances of it so that I imagined if it was the best offense versus the worst defense. So I used the Chiefs offense versus the Commanders defense with the same circumstances, same time of the game, same number of timeouts remaining. Now the NFL is a little different because it'll tell you maybe go for the field goal, the 63-yard field goal, if you're in that situation because you have an NFL kicker. But you know what it didn't say at all? Go for it. It said punt or kick a field goal. Every way I sliced it, every team I tried, every circumstance I tried, with that circumstance, with 3 timeouts, with 3 minutes and 9 seconds to go in a game, every single one said punt or kick, which they weren't going to kick. None of them said go for it. So it said if you have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, don't go for it. Punt. None of them said go for it. So if I am going to kill every coach, and I do, who's got 4th and 3 in plus territory and punts, then why should I not say, you know what? If I'm going to believe in the math this way, why don't I believe in the math this way? And and you say, oh, it didn't work. I disagree. Ari, what did Oscar Delp do when he caught the ball on Georgia's next possession after Kentucky punted?
I know.
What did he do? Tell me.
He put the ball on the ground.
He fumbled. So it worked. The ball did not bounce the way they needed it to, but it worked.
Can I talk now?
And okay. And let's also say, okay, because the coaches always say this when we kill them for the analytics. But the situation of the game matters, and what's going on and how our team's performing in this situation matters. You're absolutely right. 4th and 8. Ari, do you have to throw or do you have to run on that play?
I'm so excited to respond. You have to throw.
Okay. Kentucky called passes on the previous 2 plays. What happened on the previous 2 plays?
It was bad.
Did Brock Vandegrift almost get sacked on those plays?
Yes.
So was Kentucky going to make 8 yards on that play?
Do you think you have something here by saying that Kentucky has a hard time moving the ball against Georgia? Like, is that like a revelation? They're playing Georgia at home.
It worked. He fumbled.
Also, I'm not even results oriented. He could have muffed the punt and they could have recovered it and walked into the end zone. That wouldn't have changed my mind about the original decision to punt. Like, people say don't be results oriented. I'm not going to be results oriented. It could have worked. Absolutely. I'm not saying that
if you're process oriented, the process of choosing to punt is the correct choice because you had probably about a 25% chance of making the first down in a perfect situation. In a situation where you can't block Georgia's front, you probably had a 10% chance of making it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could make a case that the play calling before fourth down could have been different because they were moving the ball on the ground very well, and I think he was even saying that about him. I'm not saying
We agree on that.
I'm not saying it's a good situation. I'm not saying Kentucky going for it on fourth down is, absolutely 1,000% going to work. But your NFL calculator does not take into account the situation that they're playing. They lost by 1 million to South Carolina the week before. They played neck and neck with the number one team in the country for 3.5 full.
And their defense was playing better than their offense.
I understand.
And their defense forced a fumble.
And their defense could have forced the fumble at the 48, Andy, and it would have been a chance to win still. They had to get a stop either way. And I don't know if your NFL calculator has any sort of parallel to college, because the NFL and what goes on in the NFL is completely different than what goes on in college.
No, it's pretty close.
And I just, like, in my head, I don't know how you even look the team in the eye.
Well, you can look the defense in the eye.
Ball out of their hands.
You can look the defense in the eye. I don't know that I want to look the offense in the eye because the offense was busy getting sacked.
You move the ball all the way down. Vandegrift had converted a few first downs with his legs in that game. If your answer or your thought is there's no way Kentucky could have gotten 8 yards against them, then I'm not going to argue with you. Kentucky is playing Georgia. The only thing I'm arguing is that if you're going to lose, because they probably would have lost either way, honestly. They're playing Georgia. It's very hard to beat Georgia, especially when you're Kentucky. Lose by swinging. It's like you have to fight tooth and nail.
You want the thing that gives you the right feelings rather than the potential right result. They did the thing that gave them the best chance to win. The guy fumbled. They didn't get the fumble.
They were 15 yards away from making a field goal potentially, or having a makeable attempt from winning a football game on their home floor against Georgia, on their home field against Georgia. Then there's no calculator or anything that there's like, it does not persuade me at all, because the calculator doesn't.
Yeah, because you're based on feelings. You're thinking
it's not
completely with your feelings, and you're not thinking like someone whose job it is to do this.
The game of football isn't played on a blackjack card. It just isn't. So, I know that.
Well, okay. Yeah. You brought up blackjack. Very interesting.
I love blackjack. Yeah.
So you wanted Mark Stoops to hit on 19
against the 10?
You thought Mark Stoops should hit on 19.
I don't think that's what I'm saying at all. I think I want.
That's exactly what you're saying. 10. The percentage of success was extremely low. It was not necessarily.
He was not winning. When you have 19, you have a winning hand. You're losing. You have a 16.
18.
Against the 10, and you stand. That's the way I view it. And against an 18, against the 10, you lose.
He did the thing that gave him the better chance of winning.
Then he did not.
That's his job.
The 19 against the 10. That gives you a bigger chance of losing. That's not correct.
He did the thing that gave him the better chance. You wanted him to do the thing that gave him the better chance of losing, and he did the thing that gave him the better chance of winning. And you're killing him for doing it.
According to your calculator.
According to math in general. According to football in general.
It like blows my mind.
If it's 4-3, we're having a different conversation. Now, Nishant in the chat brought up a really interesting point, and here's where I will happily kill Mark Stoops. Doesn't knowing you're going for it on fourth also change the play calling before? More runs to get into fourth and short. This is where you attack.
Yeah,
right here.
This is absolutely true. Yeah, I agree with it.
Yeah, this is where, because Mark Stoops was thinking about a punt and not thinking about going for it on fourth down. Because if you have 2nd and 8 and you think you're going to need 3 and you think you're going to go for it on fourth down, and you're the type who goes for it on fourth down, because I think this is what you're getting at. This is where we do agree.
I mean, even he said it in the news conference you just played.
Yeah, like 3 plays to get 8. You're calling it differently than they called it. And our friend Clark Brooks, the SEC stat cat, brought up, hey, Barry Brown's wide open on that mesh on third down. And the left tackle just didn't hold his block long enough. I get it, but you also had just had a situation where nobody blocked anybody, and they almost, knocked the
Andy,
ball out and took it away. So
as the head coach of the Kentucky football program, you have to know that what was going to happen and what did happen was going to happen. Like, you had to know giving the ball.
You had to know that Oscar Delp's fumble was going to bounce out of bounds instead of into the hands of a Kentucky player.
You know what? I think that fumble was very fortuitous, and it's a shame they didn't get it back. The odds of that actually occurring and it happening are probably pretty low. So the fact that they got that far was
the odds of a fumble on the ground going to that is very random.
The thing that happened is exactly what everyone knew was going to happen, and the coach of Kentucky should have known that was going to happen. So they got closer to getting a fumble than I thought they probably would have. It's crazy that happened. They could have gotten it back, and you're right, it could have happened.
Bag guns. How does punting give you the best chance to win? Because you have to. Your defense has to make the play. I mean, if you stop them 3 and out, you get the ball back right after the 2-minute warning, which should give you time to go set up a field goal. That's the ideal situation. That's not what happened. That's not what happened.
By throwing it, right?
Well, eventually. But here's the thing,
okay.
Ari. Here's the thing. You would have more than one down to throw it in that situation. Also, they forced a fumble, UT Bag Gumps. They did the thing that would give them the chance to win. The ball did not bounce to them.
If the fumble didn't happen and they would have stuffed them on 3 straight plays, they would have gotten the ball back probably at their own 30 with 2 minutes left, right? And that should give them a chance.
Pest Control agrees with you. He says, what I'm missing is that you can still force a 3 and out and or fumble even if you go for it and fail. This is true. And I will point out, in Ari's defense, the play that Delp fumbled on started at the Kentucky 48.
Right.
And the fumble happened on the Kentucky 41.
Once the clock was already basically gone, even if they would have recovered it, how much time was on the clock? They would have had to throw the ball down the field to get into field goal range in the same type of scenario.
They would have had to throw the ball down the field to get 8 yards on 4th down.
I'm saying, what your scenario is, and you keep bringing up the fumble, that even if they would have recovered the fumble, they would have been in a very under the pressure situation to pick up chunk plays, and not just 1, but 2, with very little time left on the clock.
But they would have had multiple downs and timeouts or opportunities to stop the clock by going out of bounds. Like, they would have had more control.
I know, but what do you think is a higher likelihood of them getting 4th and 8 with 3 timeouts left and still getting a stop?
The higher likelihood was them getting a defensive stop.
Timeouts.
The likelihood of them getting a defensive stop and getting the ball back with some time was higher than them getting the 4th and 8, which is why he did it.
Yeah, I mean, according to the calculator, sure.
Yeah, according to math, also too, as opposed to your feelings.
The worst team in the NFL and the best team in the NFL are very much closer on the field than Georgia and Kentucky are. So it's like it's not even parallel to me.
No,
if you go look at the underdogs in the NFL this week,
because they're much worse than Georgia, is much worse
in the NFL this week that were 5.5-point underdogs or higher went 9-1 against the spread, and
Ari,
they won 4 of those.
You understand when I did when I used the calculator, I put the best offense. I was making the
best
point.
Offense in the NFL and the worst defense in the NFL are closer together than Kentucky and Georgia are.
Yeah, not the same flipped sport. It though. You're still not getting it. I flipped it to make a point. Kentucky is way worse than Georgia. Kentucky's offense is way worse than Georgia's defense.
Yeah.
Their chances of making it were almost none. Like, if Patrick Mahomes' chances of making it against the worst defense in the NFL are almost none, then what are Brock Vandagriff's chances against Georgia of making it?
Do you realize
less than that?
Kentucky would have gone for it and then not gotten it, how we would be viewing this game? Like, we view it now as a choke job, and I view it as being cowardly at the end of the game.
We'd be viewing it as a lot because you view playing defense as cowardly and playing offense as brave.
I view being brave in situations where you can go out and win the game in 2 plays. In that situation is brave. Yes,
they could have won the game,
and also too,
if the fumble had bounced their way.
And I know we have to move on, but the last thing I want to say, Andy, is Mark Stoops said in his news conference just then that you played that Kentucky wanted to go win the game the way they had played it, right?
Which is, they'd scored 12 points So would you rather win it with your defense or your offense?
There were 3 minutes left in the game. You do not play field position Iowa ball with 3 minutes left on your home field when you're 15 yards away from a game.
Georgia
There's nothing that you can say.
13 points. What's Georgia going to average this season? 35?
I think it was a really hefty debate, and I was really hoping that you would come close to changing my mind. I actually
I know you're bad at math. You're in your feelings. I got it.
Like, I also feel like I do understand a little bit about this game, Andy. And you're talking about Kentucky and Georgia in Lexington. We're not talking about the Commanders and the Chiefs. We're talking about Kentucky and Georgia.
Kentucky's defense is a lot better than Kentucky's offense. And you let Kentucky's defense have a chance, and they forced a fumble, and they didn't get it.
If they win this game, the entire field of the season, the program, everything, Mark Stoops, it changed. It's so much on the line. And being passive is just not what you're in a position to do in that moment. I don't care what the calculator says. I don't care what Iowa would have done. I don't care about this cool story or the fact that he fumbled at the 50 where they already were. It doesn't matter to me. Go for it. Be a man.
Okay. You think playing offense is manly, and I understand that playing defense is also manly. Dot says scared money don't make no money and scared coaching don't make no legends. The guy who says scared money don't make money is about to make $26 million in a buyout. So I don't think that's really the best turn of phrase for that one. Ari, we got to talk about money anyway. The Money Game. Incredible docuseries on Prime Video about the dawn of the NIL era. They follow LSU's athletes last season. So you're talking about Jayden Daniels as he wins the Heisman, Livvy Dunne as she becomes a global megastar, Angel Reese as she defends a national title and prepares to go into the WNBA. And it's insider access brought to you by Shaquille O'Neal and other folks who are very inside this game. It's so fascinating to see how these people navigate this process. Like, who helps them? Jayden Daniels, it's his mom. Livvy Dunne, it's her sister. And just a very enlightening look at the NIL era. I've got to finish binging it. I've got a couple more episodes to go, but I've been just locked in on this thing. So if you want to watch The Money Game on Prime Video, if you're already subscribed to Prime Video, just hit that link in the description of this YouTube video that you're watching. It'll take you right there. If you're not already subscribed to Prime Video, well, what are we doing? Let's go. You get The Money Game. You get the Rings of Power. You get NFL football on Thursday nights. It's one of the best deals going. So give it a shot. Check out The Money Game. I'm just the Jayden Daniels stuff alone. This audience is going to love it. So hit that link in the show description. Get yourself signed up for Prime Video and watch The Money Game. Now, all right, we're going to talk about a guy who's got to earn his money this week. That's Sherrone Moore, Michigan's coach. And we talked about this yesterday, and we said something's got to change. That offense is not functional. Davis Warren had one of the weirdest stat lines you will ever see against Arkansas State. He threw the ball 14 times. The ball never touched the ground. It went to Michigan receivers 11 times, and it went to Arkansas State players 3 times. That's not going to work, especially when you're playing USC this week. You can't afford to give USC the ball. That offense is too potent. So Sherrone Moore is making a change. Producer River, let's play that Sherrone Moore clip.
Yeah, Alex will start on Saturday. Excited for him. He's been in here chomping at the bit, so we'll move on from there. Yeah, just take the reins, perform like he did in the first couple weeks of camp. Like I said, thought he was in a really good place, and Davis outperformed him in camp at the end, and would love to see him just take the reins and do what he's been doing, through those first couple weeks. And I think he will. He's had a great couple weeks of practice. So is Davis, but obviously got to perform in the game, and excited to see what Alex is going to do. And he's been in here setting his tail off the past couple of days like he always is, but you can see it ramped up even more.
All right, Ari, they're going with Alex Orji. Do you think that changes anything for this USC game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it really just kind of implies exactly what you were talking about on the show on Monday. I think that you make this decision because you're a running team. You're not going to force throwing it, and you're going to try to do what you do best, which is pound the football and play defense. And we know how fond you are of defense. So I think that it will be interesting to see if they can corral. I'm still fired up, man. I'm It's
The
disgusting.
chat is on your side, by the way. The chat is completely on your side.
Everyone's on my side, Andy. Like, it's not whatever.
That's all
it's
right.
okay.
Listen, I'm not always going to agree with everybody. It's okay.
I know. I like when you don't agree. This is what
I'm happy to
makes
be
this
on an island here.
Yeah, but let's get back to Michigan. I'm sorry. I have
Okay.
a toxic trait where if I get into an argument about something, like 3 hours later, like I'll like jab the person I was in an argument with when we're not even talking about it anymore. I got to work on that. But yes, I think that USC has proven that it has a better defense, right? We think they have a better defense. We know their offense is going to score. So when you look at the best route for Michigan to win this game, it is to hold the ball for long periods of time and play really good defense, right? And also putting USC money where its mouth is by proving that its defense is still good. You know, we have a shutout. They did really well against LSU. There is some proof in concept that their defense is better, but going against a team that pounds it as well as Michigan, like this is going to be tackling well, right? Filling gaps, playing sound assignment-oriented football. And we're not that far into the season yet, and it's not too late for USC to have a defensive regression. So I think I like this. I mean, I think my assumption was that Orji was going to start the entire offseason. I don't know if he's a terrible thrower, but I know that Davis wasn't getting it done. So you kind of do what you have to do. You already have a loss on your schedule. You know, this is a 12-team era. Michigan is still in 0-0 in Big Ten play. Like, do what you got to do to try to win this football game.
Well, and I think you're right on this. That Sharon Moore went on to say in that press conference yesterday that Orji was basically winning the job, and then the last 2 weeks of camp, Davis Warren outplayed him. And I was reading Clayton Sayfie from the Wolverine and our friend Austin Meek from the Athletic, and it really sounded like this is Sharon Moore saying I made a mistake, that I let that last 2 weeks influence my decision maybe too much, and that I should have gone with what we were planning all along. And this is, I go back to Alabama last year, Ari, when they couldn't quite decide if Jalen Milroe was their guy, so they didn't call plays specifically tailored to Jalen Milroe really until after game 4. So they played the first 2 games. They lost to Texas in game 2. They went to USF. That was when they started. Only then did they start acting like Milroe was the starting quarterback and kind of game planning that way, calling the game that way. And so maybe that's what happens here. Maybe this becomes the offense that Michigan's supposed to have, because this is the one they were planning to have most of the offseason. And I would imagine it's very run heavy. Like I in the headline, I put Michigan will run the damn ball. I think this probably makes them a 60 to 65% run team. But I go back to last year with Alabama, and I realized like Jalen Milroe has evolved as a quarterback. We saw him on Saturday. But early on, there were guys running open because people were so afraid of what Milroe and the backs could do on the ground. I would think Orji and Michigan's backs would probably scare you in a similar way.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like even in life with me and you and everybody, like there is a struggle between who you want to be and who you are, like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a very profound connection to football of like, I'm sure Michigan wanted to be a team that threw the ball really well, but there has to be a realization at some point that it's probably just not who they are this year. That doesn't mean they stink or they can't win football games. It just means that you have to lean into that. Be happy with what you are and try to cultivate what you are and use that to win football games. So I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if, like Michigan won with this formula last year, but Michigan also had a first round quarterback that could get him out of some jams in throwing situations and who was really good with his feet. Like, I do think that this is a very important context game because going into it, Andy, we think that Michigan kind of stinks so far this year because of what we've seen on the field, and we think USC is a playoff team because of what on the field. But it's like, are we absolutely certain about either of those two things? Are we certain USC is great? Are we certain that Michigan's going to have a really bad year? Like the spread here, in this over-under, to me, is an implication that there's some confidence that Michigan's defense is going to be able to slow them down, and this is going to be a football game. So how do you do that? You move the chains, you control the clock, you control the ball, you limit big plays, and you just be yourself. And that's what I think this really is all about.
Yeah. And okay, we haven't actually talked as much about USC. You talked a lot about, yesterday their offense and what Miller Moss can do with those receivers. But this is a big one for Lincoln Riley, because I feel like if he can go to Michigan and win this game, that maybe we're sort of all the way back in on Lincoln Riley, because I think I know I was starting to doubt. And I said it all offseason. Like, I think Lincoln Riley's too smart to not make the adjustments he needs to make. He's too young. He's got too much coaching ahead of him to not adjust here. And it looks like he's adjusted. But again, we probably need to see that, because we still don't know what LSU is exactly.
Yeah, well, being out on Lincoln Riley is a very relative thought, and I think that I'm happy we're having this conversation, because I think it could be 30,000 foot views of both programs. But my out on Lincoln Riley was never about what he has proven time and time again to do really well, which is to design very fun, exciting offenses, to develop quarterbacks, and to put points on the board. The thing I was out on was the notion that he was a top 5 coach and program builder in the country, like he was on many of those lists when he was leaving Oklahoma and first getting to USC, because you cannot have a coach who fundamentally cannot field a good defense. And, people will say it's not his defense. He's not he's an offensive coach, but it's his job as a head coach and a program CEO to put the right coordinators in place to do this. And the thing that bothers me about USC more than anything, Andy, is what if they would have gotten Danton Lynn last year? When you had maybe one of the best, most talented quarterbacks of the last 10 years on your team? What if you would have made the right hire when you first got there and had a really good defense, or a much better defense in year one? You would have already owed me $1,000. They were already a half away from making the playoff in year one with a really bad defense. And it's like, I can't let him off the hook for making the wrong decisions with his own coaching staff. And the last thing I'll say, when you want to talk about getting back on USC's side, like, they have a really good team this year, and I think there's a real chance that they're going to make the playoff in this new 12-team field. But I'm also not very happy with the way that USC is recruited. I thought they were going to own the West Coast, and they just haven't even really been that huge of a factor in their own area of the country, which is Southern California. So there are a lot of things about the beginning of USC's tenure with Lincoln Riley that I'm kind of disappointed in. And I don't know if winning against Michigan is going to change my viewpoint on that, but he's certainly winning back a lot of welfare, not just because of individual games, but because he showed the ability to make the hard decision with his coordinator and try to repair and fix what was really wrong with his program as a whole.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think has happened. But again, it's a small sample size, because if Michigan averages 7 yards a carry here and wins this game, I don't think they would blow them out. I think, even with the good players Michigan has on defense, it's still going to be very hard to keep USC's offense completely in check. But if Michigan is just rolling down the field on the ground, there's a really good chance they win this game. And we may say, oh, never mind, it's all the same again. So this is, we talked about this being kind of the week of discovery. I feel like we're going to discover quite a bit about Sharon Moore, about USC, about Lincoln Riley, Danton Lynn. I think we're going to discover a lot here.
Yeah, and I don't know, did they announce yet, or are we still waiting to see if Loveland's going to play in the game?
Great question. Torian in the chat had the same question. Moore said it did not seem as serious as it initially looked, but I don't know that means he's going to play this weekend. So, I think they'll probably be pretty cagey about that.
Yeah, so we'll see on Saturday if Loveland plays, but you have your number one offensive weapon that's not a running back potentially out of the game. And I do think that a really good Michigan defensive performance in this game limits USC to 24, 27 points. Do you think Michigan can score 30 playing this way?
That's the question. I mean, not based on what we've seen, but I don't know what they're going to look like because this is the offense. And I'm thinking in kind of like blue sky terms, like the ideal version of the offense that I'm envisioning Alex Orji running at Michigan is not a scoring juggernaut. It's a time-consuming yardage, like break your soul offense. if it works. Like the ideal version, if it works, is they just mash you. And that's the sort of thing that does not,
because we're not
like, you don't
talking
jump
about
out to a
Denard
big-
Robinson here, right? Like somebody who's going to take
no.
it 80 yards every time he touches the ball. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what I'm thinking about? Like what Texas A&M kind of ran against Florida last week.
Yeah.
That's kind of the ideal of what this what it should look like, where you need to you need to move the ball. You're just going to keep handing it off. Let the quarterback run
point.
some.
Yeah. And like Marcel Reed made some plays. So I think maybe the difference too here is you run the ball as effectively as A&M did against Florida, but you also pop some passes in crucial moments and make some plays. Because I think that Reed deserves a lot of credit for the way that he played in that game too. And I'm not saying Orji can't do it, but I do think that there needs to be a passing element. Maybe not, something that you rely on, but something that, you gamble on a little bit and hit on in crucial points of the game.
Nate in the chat, Nathan, Andy wants Michigan to be the new Iowa. No, I want Michigan to use the players they have on the roster to put the best product on the field they can. And we talked about this already after the Michigan-Texas game. This season is going to be different for Michigan because of the way the transition happened last year. They could not fill the holes on their roster and could not get a portal quarterback because of the way Jim Harbaugh left, because of the timing of all that. I suspect, and I don't know how you feel about this, I suspect next year will be different because they will have a better chance to create the balance on the roster that they would prefer, because they're going to actually be able to use that December portal window, and they'll have had a full cycle of recruiting with Schromm.
But then at the same time, they're probably going to lose 3 of the top 10 players in college football on defense next year. So, and they have not recruited at a clip that is showing you that they can replace those guys, at least not year over year, maybe in 3 years, but not right away. So, I think that this is going to be a really interesting game. And the thing I do think is worth note, Andy, is that the pendulum has swung pretty rapidly here. From the beginning of the year, the preseason notion was, Michigan might be a 10-win team, a playoff team, somebody who can compete for a Big Ten championship. And I think now the story is, how good is USC actually? And is this going to be another win that proves that they are the second or third best team, maybe the fourth best team in the Big Ten this year?
Yeah. Yep. And I can't wait to see it, because again, Discovery Saturday, we talked about all the different games where we're going to learn just more about teams, and Michigan, USC, Louisville, who haven't really seen play anybody yet. They're playing Georgia Tech, that Auburn, Arkansas game. I think we're going to learn a lot. Yes, sir.
I got to say something.
Go for it.
USC doesn't play Oregon or Ohio State in the regular season too. So
Correct.
I am cautiously optimistic that I'm going to backdoor this. I think, and for those who are not aware, Andy and I placed a bet with each other for $1,000 2 years ago. My side was that USC would make the playoff in the first 3 years, and his was that they wouldn't. Andy was a half away from losing in year 1, but frankly speaking, was right. He was on the right side of this. This is like gambling 101. Even when you're right, sometimes you don't win.
I'm still maybe going to be wrong.
Because USC probably wouldn't make the 14 field, and I would have lost, because that was still the 14 field, and they hadn't been in the Big Ten yet when we made that bet. So you initially got the better side of it when they moved to the Big Ten. I was like, oh boy, their schedule just got much harder than it was before, and then it went back in my direction with a 12-team playoff. But I didn't even have USC in my top 25 in the preseason. So if they're finishing in the top 11, I still think that would be a much better outcome than I thought was even possible coming into the year.
Oh, yeah. Listen, if they are better on defense and again, proving once again that you don't doubt Lincoln Riley on offense, I'm happy to be wrong on this, because that's what they paid for. That's what they're supposed to get. And I'm happy if Lincoln Riley evolved as a coach into one that can have a good defense opposite that incredible offense, because that's what he needs to do to take the next step. And he's a young guy, and I don't want to see the same thing just keep happening over and over again. So I feel like this looks like progress, but again, we could be saying a completely different thing on Saturday night, and that's what makes all of this so much fun.
And we also could take a moment of appreciation before we move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
that as much as I despise the fact that the Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore and that conferences don't make any sense geographically and that like things are just kind of all over the place, I guess the one highlight here is that we get USC at Michigan in September now. So like that, like this is a very intriguing matchup. We never would have gotten it in the past. It's a helmet game for sure. It's a discovery game for sure, but like kind of excited that we get this now. That's one of the positives of television money reshaping our sport. So just a moment of appreciation because I do bemoan it a lot. I'm negative a lot when it comes to the changes. I will be positive when positive things arise. That's my olive branch to you.
Yeah, and who knows? This could become like a legit rivalry. And that's the other. We don't know which of these will become rivalries because sometimes teams have to be thrown together and then have classic games against one another, and that makes a rivalry. So USC Michigan would be a really fun rivalry if it became one. So we'll find out. All right, we got to talk Tennessee and Oklahoma. But first, I tell everybody about PrizePicks, the most fun daily fantasy game in America. Use that code STAPLES. You play $5, you get $50 instantly. Ari and I both used the almost free Caleb Williams square this past weekend to win. I needed it because I was not doing great, but they give you Caleb Williams 0.5 passing yards. You say more than 0.5 passing yards. He throws for a yard, and then you win. You pick multiple squares. Pick at least two. The more you pick, the higher the potential payout. Caleb Williams throwing for a yard in a loss allowed me to break even this weekend, essentially. It allowed Ari to go up. So pretty good deal. But that's how PrizePicks works. They are currently populating the board for college football for this week, but also you've got the NFL. You've got the WNBA. You've got darts. You've got esports. You name it, they got it. It's a whole lot of fun. So download the PrizePicks app. Use the code STAPLES. Play $5. Get $50 instantly. All right, while we're talking moolah, Ari, before we get into discussion of the Tennessee-Oklahoma game, I just put a story out on On3 and have an interview with Tennessee Athletic Director Danny White about something they're doing that's very interesting. They are announcing a 10% talent fee will be added to all their ticket sales going forward, basically to pay the athletes. So this is assuming that the House settlement goes through, the revenue sharing starts next year. They are doing this to raise more money to pay the athletes. And the way they, it's $22 million a year that the schools would be allowed to share if this settlement goes through. Because there are extra scholarships allowed in the new scholarship caps, Danny White was estimating that it's actually going to cost about $30 million total if you want to fully fund it. He believes the 10% fee will allow them to recoup about a third of that, so about $10 million of that. But what do you think of this? A school just saying, "Hey, it's like going to a restaurant and you have a group of 6 or more, and they throw the 18% tip on there before you even get a chance." Like, that's what this feels like.
Yeah. You know what it kind of feels like to me? And I'm not saying it's not smart. This is the new world. We have to do what we have to do. But like when you go on an airline and you have to pay to check your bag, or you go to a hotel and you have to pay $8 to park, just put it into the price and don't insult me. Just don't even... Just make the season tickets and the tickets that you're selling 10% more expensive. Don't say anything, and then recoup some of the costs that you have, and that's it. So I think that it becomes a bigger deal. And I don't know if there's a rule. Maybe there's a rule or something that you have to signify or show where that.
There's no rule. I don't think anybody's thought about this yet.
So 10%. I mean, listen, everyone's going to have to do this because that is a lot of money that they're going to have to recoup. And I'm not saying they don't have the money, but people are going to want to recoup their investments in the players. So Tennessee is going to put a 10% fee out there, right? But everybody's going to have a 10% increase or a 15% increase of their goods and services, because when money goes out, money has to come in somehow. So I do think that as a fan, maybe this is different than the analogy I made. Maybe they want to pay the 10% so they can feel like they're helping their team. I don't know the psychology there. I do know that this is going to be an important thing that everyone's going to eventually have to do, and Tennessee's just on the forefront of it.
You can probably do it easier at Tennessee right now than almost anywhere else because their fans are happy right now. They feel like things are going well. Like, can you imagine if Florida tried this right now?
Yeah, next week, if you want to go to a Florida game, you got to pay 10% for the talent fee.
Yeah, that's what somebody in the chat immediately said, or on my Twitter when I posted the story, they immediately said, "Well, is Florida going to give them 10% back?" So
yeah, the talent fee in the NFL is just called tickets in sales and television contracts, and it's everything's a talent.
And I
fee.
do think it's all going to come together, but this is interesting because the first time we've seen a school do this. I got a clip from my interview with Danny White. If you want to watch the full interview, it's available on the On3 Sports YouTube page, or you can click on my story; it'll be embedded in there. But I asked him because this, the House settlement hasn't gone through, so I asked him, how do you prepare for this when you don't really know what the rules are going to be, and how flexible do you have to be over the next year or so? Because it feels like a lot of this stuff is just coming. You're dealing with what a court says or what a state decides, and then all the other states change their laws. How flexible have you college administrators had to be in these last few years just to manage that and deal with that?
Yeah, you're trying to solve a problem when you don't really know a lot of the details yet, and so we're doing different scenarios all the time, but we can't just put a 10% fee in the laps of our fans with a month before the season starts. We have to be prepared, and there are financial realities. I think in any scenario, it's going to become more expensive to compete at the level that we want to continue to compete at, and we have aspirations to grow even more competitively. I know our fans do too. We're proud of the accomplishments over the last few years, how much better we've gotten across the board. Proud of finishing number 3 in the All Sports Cup nationally. Proud of winning the SEC All Sports Cup the last 3 years. All that's great, but we're still hungry for more. And the talent fee and all the other ways our fans support us are a huge part of that equation.
So that's it. And in the chat, I got to find it. DA. Imagine Florida State asking their fans this right now. I think if things are going well, you can probably do this. And Tennessee's got a 15,000 seat waiting list or 15,000 person waiting list for football season.
And what was your
tickets.
strategy in the car that you said? I thought that was really funny. Do you remember we were talking when you said about the wait list? You should probably raise the prices all the way up until there's no wait list.
I think that's what an economist would say is raise your prices until there's no wait list. But the problem and the problem with that is if you start to lose, then not only do you not have a wait list anymore, you might have some people not wanting to buy. So
yeah, no, I get it. But it was just a funny thing. It's a thought. It's like, okay, well, you have 15,000 people who are lining up who will probably pay more than the 100,000 who are buying it now. But I do think that there is we're still in this influx situation just in terms of accepting what college football has become. And I think that it's becoming more and more regular. Like the notion of donating to an NIL fund, though, I think is stupid. Doing it this way, hopefully, will kind of negate the feeling of donating to something else. I feel like fans would probably be more likely or more willing to pay a fee that goes directly to the institution to compensate the players than they would be to giving it to a third party and trusting them to just figure it out, So I do think that we're going to get to a point where this is just regular. I don't know if you're going to have something that comes on the bottom line that says 10% talent fee. You're just going to pay more for your tickets.
Just be part of the price.
Everything's more expensive now. I mean, I went to Costco the other day and spent $500 and I don't even know what I bought.
Yeah. And no, you're exactly right. And the other part of this, I think, is that ADs really are understand that the model right now is not sustainable. Because who's funding these collectives? It's not the rank and file fans. It's the big donors. But the big donors are also still being asked to make the big donations for all the capital projects, all the other things that the athletic department wants to do. All that needs to come under one umbrella that, because you keep asking those people to do that and they're eventually going to burn out. Well, eventually they're already burning out. At most schools, they're already burning out. And those people are saying, I'm not doing this anymore. And you need to come up with a different way to fund it. And to be perfectly honest, like you said, the way you fund it is your ticket sales and your TV revenue. And it should just be part of your budget.
The same way it does in every other professional sport. Yeah. So it's a pro sport now, and that's just the way it is. But also, too, I'm assuming that NIL funds probably go like this based on results. I think people are going to have more fatigue donating year over year if the teams aren't very good. I can't imagine that the people who donated to the Florida NIL fund are feeling really good about what they did with their money right now.
Well,
whereas this type of fee,
but that's
just a constant fee.
That's also why I'm confident in saying the Florida decision's been made, because the second those people were like, no more for this administration or this coaching staff, the decision's made for you. It doesn't matter. Like,
and I know
it doesn't matter how you feel about it anymore.
This isn't just a Florida thing. It's true for all the teams that aren't good that have NIL funds. I can't imagine that the people who spent money on Ohio State's NIL fund last year were very excited about the way that season ended. Like, it's not just like being bad. When you have an investment in something, just like the stock market or anything else, if you put your money into something, you want to see a return on it. So now you're just kind of being put in a position, at least at Tennessee, that's forward thinking on this, to just, that be part of the package that you get when you buy tickets. And it doesn't really feel quite as donation-y as maybe the NIL fund would.
Yeah. I think that's where it's all going. And I think this is probably sort of a nudge by Danny White in that direction, because it's
smart. I think it's smart.
Like to see.
I think it's a smart move, and to be on the forefront. Like, Tennessee has been from the beginning a pioneer when it comes to situating its roster and its program with enough money in order to survive in this new era. And I do think that, as much as in coaching, if you don't evolve with the times, your program's going to suffer. I think this is an administrative level thing too. If you don't do the things that are necessary to keep everybody happy, healthy, and paid, you're going to have issues. So I do think that this is a smart idea, and I just think that this is the first program that's going to do it. Eventually, everyone's going to do it.
Yeah, I would think this is coming down the pipe from everybody. Let's talk about Tennessee on the field, because this game is so exciting. Tennessee going to Oklahoma. It's Oklahoma's first SEC game as a member. It is Josh Heupel's return to Oklahoma. And Ari, so we're doing the Wendy's sauciest takes tomorrow. And you're responsible for the 3 takes this time. I'll be judging which of your 3 takes is the sauciest.
My first one is that Kentucky should have gone for it on 4th. I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, we can listen if you want.
Do you want to do it again?
Do that again?
I'll run it back tomorrow.
No, we're not running it back tomorrow. You have to come up with something new. You've already written about it, and we've talked about it twice. All right, but since you're responsible for those 3, I've got one that I've wanted a take that I've needed to get off this week. So I'm going to get it off here.
Okay.
Josh Heupel needed to be fired at Oklahoma to become the coach he became ultimately at UCF and Tennessee.
Let's unpack that.
Getting fired at Oklahoma sent him on the vision quest that led him to this offense, because he ran a different offense at Oklahoma that led him to the Baylor Art Briles offense that he has taken and then evolved to the version they run now. He needed that. He needed to go on that vision quest, find that offense, and find who he was as a coach, which allowed him to work, do well at Utah State, do well at Missouri, which put him on the radar to become UCF's head coach. And now here he is at Tennessee. I know he's still very mad about getting fired by Bob Stoops, and I understand why. But as bad as it was, I'm not sure he's this guy without it.
Seen a lot of the Bob Stoops clip on Twitter this week. It's going to be a fun week. That's a very interesting thought process. And if you don't write about it, I'm just going to steal that idea. We work together.
No, I'll write about it.
Oh, God. No, but it's a really smart analysis there, because it's possible that he might not be who he is today had he never left. And the thing, too, is that he kind of worked his way up the hard way. This isn't just like he got gifted the Tennessee job when he was young. Like, he went to multiple stops, learned something new, cultivated his knowledge, built programs, and then was eventually hired here. And even when he was hired at Tennessee, he was never appreciated right away. And now it's like, you've said this, and I 100% agree. It's like, does Tennessee, with a pick of who their coach could be, even find somebody outside of Nick Saban that they would rather have at this point?
Yeah. And that's the thing, like with all these jobs that are going to come open this year, you've mentioned this multiple times, and I feel like we should remind people, like, whoever you think is the ideal coach might be, but nobody thought Josh Heupel was the ideal coach for Tennessee except Danny White. And look how that turned out. Like, sometimes
the more I'm thinking
is the right guy.
is that, like, who were the slam dunk hires of the last 10 years, and did they work and not work? Like, Scott Frost comes to mind. There wasn't a single
that
person
didn't work.
on earth that thought, I mean, like, Jim Harbaugh worked, right? Obviously.
Yes.
But for the first 5
eventually,
years, like, people forget in the COVID year, people wanted him out. You know, like, it takes time sometimes too. And like, my whole premise with college football, and I think it's like the Dabo Swinney hypothesis here, is that there are programs that actually have the right guy, and because patience doesn't exist anymore, that having the right guy never gets to materialize because they're fired too soon. Like, Dabo, I think, won 10 games in his second year at Clemson, but I think in year 3, people were out on him, if I remember correctly.
They were, and he made a very drastic change. He fired Billy Napier as his offensive coordinator and hired Chad Morris. And then the following, they won the ACC, and then they, had that horrible Orange Bowl against West Virginia. He fired Kevin Steele as his defensive coordinator, who wound up actually becoming a very good defensive coordinator against those offenses later in his career, but fired Kevin Steele and hired, well, here's how we bring this full circle to this Tennessee-Oklahoma game, Brent Venables.
Yeah.
And Brent Venables, I think, was the last missing piece that created that Clemson dynasty. And why was Brent Venables available? Another decision by Bob Stoops. And this one I don't agree with as much as the Josh Heupel one. Their offense was stagnating. They hired Lincoln Riley. Their offense did get better. Bob Stoops was going to basically demote Brent Venables so he could make his brother the DC. And his brother was not a good DC at Oklahoma. That's why Brent Venables went to Clemson. And it ended up creating, ultimately completing what Clemson needed to be, and then helped Venables wind up getting the Oklahoma job.
But there is an alternate world in there somewhere where the ball bounces one way or whatever, where Clemson could have fired Dabo. Like, it before Clemson became what they became.
Because he didn't have the equity. They easily could have just said, you know what? We tried with the interim guy. He had a nice year, but this isn't going to work. And they didn't.
We need something bigger and better long term, and you don't get to see that materialize. But there have been a lot of slam dunks or good hires that haven't worked. So, like, when it comes to hiring a football coach to lead a program in the modern era, that almost feels like as big of a crapshoot as picking the quarterback you want to lead your NFL team. Like, I mean, I watched the Caleb Williams game the other night, and I'm like, this guy looks like he doesn't belong on the field right now. And I'm not saying he can't be great eventually, but like, this is supposed to be the most can't miss prospect since Trevor Lawrence, who's also struggling. So, like, it's hard to feel really good about who you're hiring immediately. But I think that very soon into the tenure, it didn't take long for Josh Heupel to be like, all right, guys, this is my deal now. Like,
I got
it going there. Don't be upset the day someone's hired. Be upset 2 years in when it looks like what's going on in Florida. Like, I don't think that we have a very good feel. And the reason why they pay millions and millions of dollars for these search firms to do the thing that we do on this podcast is there's so much money invested in who the coach should be. There's so much money invested in who the quarterbacks are scouted for the NFL. Like, these are really big decisions. And frankly, with all the money in the world thrown at it, you still get them wrong all the time.
Correct. Now, Heupel definitely seems loose going back to Oklahoma.
Should be a great crowd. It's a passionate fan base. I'm expecting them to be extremely quiet for us out of respect to me and our program too. So,
Josh Heupel's got jokes.
Yeah, that would be nice.
I brought you a national title, people. You're going to keep it down when we're on offense, right? Right.
I mean, it would be, honestly, I don't know if this could ever happen, but it would be super respectful. And, like, I think a really nice moment in sports, like you would see in a movie, if, like, the place was silent on Tennessee's first offensive play.
Oh, that would be cool.
Like, could you imagine how cool of an atmosphere that would be? I think they're going to do the exact opposite, but it would be kind of a cool, like, I do think that, like, when they
say his name at some point before the game and the crowd cheers, because I think they will. Like, I think the Oklahoma fans will definitely cheer for Josh Heupel once, and then they'll get back to booing his team.
Yeah, but I just I do think that in college football, when you win a national championship for a program, whether it be a player or a coach, that even if bad, uncomfortable things happen after, that you're always one of them. Like, I just think that stays with you forever. And even if they're going to hate Tennessee and hope like hell their team wins, that there should be a level of respect and admiration for a person that put a trophy in your building, because that doesn't go away.
Well, Heupel got asked about that.
Well, let's go ahead and get to it.
What are you going to talk about?
Let's talk about Nebraska. You go back into Norman. Have you thought about the emotions when you walk into that stadium?
Yeah, it'll be unique. I had teammates and friends back there. They hit me up a little bit early. They were starting last week already. It'll be unique going back into that stadium. It's going to be a viewpoint. I'm not sure I've ever spent a day on the opposing sideline inside of that stadium, not even for a scrimmage. So it'll be different, but it's one that I'm really looking forward to. There's so many people that have been a huge part of my journey that I get a chance to go back and hopefully get a chance to say hi to a bunch of them. It starts with teammates. It's coaches that I had. It's a lot of coaches that I coached with. There's a lot of personnel that's still there. Guys that I coached, guy that was in my wedding. There's a lot of people back there that I'm familiar with and have a lot of respect for.
Ari, I cannot wait for this game. I'm very jealous that you're going to be there, because this is something the Oklahoma fans have been waiting for a long time. Not that the hype will return, but just them debuting in the SEC, them being able to show against a kind of an old school SEC team, hey, we've been dominating at football for a long time. And then Tennessee, you've got Nico Mania, you got maybe Josh Heupel's most complete team since he's been there. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, and again, another piece of admiration for the game that we get, despite the fact that it stinks that Texas and Oklahoma, to me, are not of the Big 12 anymore. I cannot wait to get up there. I'm fired up. I don't know. Do I go Friday night? Do I go Saturday morning? Like, I don't know. We're going to figure it out, but it's going to be a night game. It's going to be awesome. And I think that, regardless of who wins this game, that it's going to go a long way in helping us contextualize who's legit and who's not. Like, I predicted on Monday that I think Tennessee is going to win this game by multiple scores. I think that they are that good this year, and I'm actually starting to question whether or not I think this team belongs on the same field as Texas and Georgia. I'm almost there to could Tennessee win the national championship this year? Like, that is a thought process in my head. So, man, I'm expecting big things. I mean, Andy, the pieces are in place.
The pieces are in place. They're complete. But they have to be able to do things like go to Norman and win a game. Right. That's how you prove it. Ari, I'm going to give you a recommendation. Now, Norman, Oklahoma, suburban OKC in general, one of the more interesting things about the place is hardly anyone charges for queso, and queso's extra everywhere else. So just a thought if you're looking for bargain shop. But I'm going to give you another one. If you decide to go up the night before, or if you decide to go up just very early on Saturday and you want to have a little breakfast or a little brunch, go to Neighborhood Jam.
I do feel like I have to go up. Oh, keep going. But talk slowly and dirty to me with this. Okay,
so you're going to want to order the hot jam biscuit, scratch-made biscuit with jalapeno peach jam, fried chicken breast, bacon, 1 egg, however you want it. I would suggest over easy, so you can break that yolk and let it just trickle down. Cheddar. And then breakfast potatoes or hash browns. For an extra $2, you can make it nasty, which is there's gravy on it too. Ari, make it nasty. Make it nasty.
I mean, I think I kind of have to go up the night before after that. Because I do need to wait. At the very least, I'm probably going to leave my house at 7 because I want to get to Norman in time for the kickoff of the 11 a.m. games. And have to be in a hotel or somewhere where we can do an instant reaction video if something goes off the rails. So I guess I could make a case of why are you going up the night before, honey? Because I want to make it nasty in Norman.
Exactly. Now she's not going to know what that means. When you explain that it's about a biscuit, she's probably still going to be pissed.
Yeah,
but you got to do it
better than the alternative. It could be something way worse. So hey,
exactly. I mean, her imagination is going to run wild, and when you say, well, it's this biscuit, she'd be like, Okay.
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 I'll see you on
That's
Sunday.
fine. Yeah. Ari, it has been a pleasure. You need to go clock in at the Take Factory. We need 3 of your sauciest takes for tomorrow for Wendy's Saucy Take Wednesday, and I will be judging yours. I've already gotten my 1 take off for the week. We've had our major argument for the week. We might, who knows? Depending on how saucy you get, we may argue a lot tomorrow too. But I cannot wait, and we will talk to you guys tomorrow.